Maybe as a disclaimer, I thought I would take my shot at the ordination story, but it got so long, and I won't tell it that long. So how it comes out will be how it does. On a sunny day, I assume, in Southern California in 1956, a small boy was sitting on his heavy metal tricycle. I know it was a heavy metal tricycle because tricycles were made of very heavy metal in 1956. And he was pedaling around the family patio. It was a Southern California family that happened to also have a swimming pool in the backyard, not unusual in Southern California. And the little boy on his tricycle pedals, 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 pedals right off the edge of the swimming pool and sank to the bottom of the deep end. Fortunately for this child and for the child's family, there was an adult nearby who saw this happen, who dived into the swimming pool and to save the child. And what he reported was that in order to get the boy off of his tricycle, he had to pry his fingers from the handlebars, who were clinging. I'm sure he was shocked. I'm sure he was confused. And this is what he was hanging on to. But to save him from that swimming pool, his fingers had to be pried out, and he was brought to the surface. So happily, the boy was saved. He did not drown. And the story is significant because the having happened of this story, the having ceased, was the final drop in the bucket of many causes that turned my mind towards the homeless life, to ordaining as a Buddhist nun. 50 years later, this story is what pulled that trigger. Now, I was not in Southern California. I was 3 years old at the time as well. I was hanging around in the woods of North Georgia outside of Atlanta, picking up turtles and dodging snakes and, living with my family. But the important thing about as I've been thinking through this whole story, is like the biographical material for myself is not all that interesting, but context is helpful. But the thing that has been the important kind of pulse for my whole journey towards becoming a nun has been the truth of the Buddha's teaching. That's what got my attention. That's what made me move forward. And that's what brought me to ordination. And this was not a fast journey. It was not an easy journey. It also, far, 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 far before this 1956 incident on the tricycle, somebody in the continuity of this consciousness did a lot of really good merit and made a lot of strong prayers. Because I feel like if I look at it, it's like, it wasn't like this, but the impression kind of was that my karma was so strong that I'm like bumping along on my rear end, getting dragged toward that which I had prayed for. And I wasn't making it any easier for myself. It took a really long time. So the background is that, short story. I grew up actually already aware. By 3 years old, I also was quite aware of dukkha. I was quite aware that things change. I was aware of impermanence. I was aware that you don't get what you ask for. You rarely get what you want. That didn't stop me, however, from striving with all of my heart to get what I wanted, which I'm still doing today. So I already had that awareness, but I was very aware of suffering. By nature, I was pretty much a happy child, but the adults around me were really in pain. There was a lot of hard stuff going on for them. And that affected me a lot in wanting to find a way to relieve that pain. But I didn't have a clue. I'm a kid, right? You just don't know. The thing that did relieve my pain was that I hung out a lot with my grandparents and my great-grandparents, and I was in church a lot. And their faith in Jesus actually helped me have a refuge through those difficult years of my childhood that I could rely on. And and it also gave me a sense of what a genuine refuge could feel like. Of course, I got older. I started asking questions. Um, I became more and more cynical as time went on. When the minister who was trying to get me to confirmation couldn't explain to me why God needed me to praise him before he would answer a prayer. God is not that hung up that he needs praise before he'll answer a prayer. I quit. Well, I quit in my mind. I actually did the confirmation, but that was the end of my time with Christianity. And then shortly thereafter, but I lost that anchor, right? By the time I was 16, I had also lost any kind of parental guidance, and I had no inner moral compass. So what is my alternative? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, to pursue. Now, I was committed to a life of truth and beauty. I did have that. And what we can do with sorrow, if you can't, or suffering, is make something beautiful out of it. So that was my refuge for a long time. Let's make beautiful theater, let's make beautiful music, and in the meantime, let's do everything we can to block out the pain. Consume as much food as we can, consume as much alcohol as we can, consume some drugs as you can, consume some people as you can. Recipe for disaster, right? So crash, burn. Many people have a crash and burn story. And that was a very fortunate turning point in my life because it saved my life, actually. Literally saved my life. Good karma. Good karma. And then immediately thereafter, I found my next source of refuge, which was the practice of Reiki, which is a healing art, works in energetic systems. Gave me a foundation and a basis and a way to be of benefit to other people. I was working and I loved my work. That's been the key all along. I loved my work in the theater, but I wasn't very healthy. I loved my work in Reiki. It seemed super healthy. People were dying of AIDS at the time that I was doing this. I was able to help. I didn't stand there helpless. I felt like there was some way I could contribute in a meaningful way and begin to actually make up for my past, to begin to actually work with suffering in the world. So I did that for a long time. I took big refuge in that. But there was always a spiritual undertow, looking. I was looking for some place to actually place my refuge. And I had brushed in with Buddhism a few times in my life. In the 70s, I had met, or I heard Ram Dass teach and learn Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate. I've been chanting it my whole life since then, still. In the 80s, I was hanging out with somebody who was serving Ginlam Rinpoche's retreat at Cloud Mountain. So she took me to talks with Alan Wallace. Several. I didn't understand a word he said, but I was fascinated by the clarity of his mind. People around me were doing Buddhism, were practicing. It was all kind of interesting, but I thought it was about breathing. Slightly boring. I knew how to breathe. And I was looking for something much more exotic. I was walking on fire. I was, looking for higher trips that would really take me into, exalted states. I'm still trying to avoid the pain. Until one day I went to a talk by a Buddhist nun, of all people. She was giving a workshop with a hospice nurse. Venerable Seppo actually was the person that guided me to that talk because we were both working with people with AIDS and Reiki, and this seemed like a good thing to do. So let's go learn about death and dying from the Tibetan tradition and from the hospice tradition position. So it was interesting. Carry on with my life. I'm doing my work. I love my work. I'm busy doing my work. But my friend started taking classes with vulnerable children, and that's when I began to see that this person started to change. And I thought, what's she doing? maybe I'll go. So I started sneaking into Venerable's classes. I mean, sneaking, I would go in the back. I didn't stay long. She was teaching the Wheel of Sharp Weapons. And the more she talked about karma and the results of karma and how things worked, the more I thought, oh my God, this is really true. This is really how things are. And that was my first hook into the Dharma. So when I sat at a first Vajrasattva retreat, just a few days retreat, it was the first time that I went on that, and I sat with a group of people, and I take refuge in the three jewels. I will liberate all sentient beings and lead them from suffering. Thus, I perfectly generate the mind dedicated to attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. On the first recitation, I was like, this is it. This is it. This is it. I'm here. I'm done. Did that mean I ordained? No. It did not. Years went by. I ended up, from that moment on, I knew I was going to do the 3-month Vajrasattva retreat. They were talking about it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. And just a few months, maybe a couple of months before that, I remember walking around Green Lake with a young friend of mine who was kind of like my niece. She was the daughter of my dearest friends. And she said, why are you doing this 3-month retreat? And I remember clearly saying to her, Mara, I'm 45 years old. I have everything I ever wanted. I have a good relationship. I own my own practice, in my own business, doing what I love to do. I'm singing in a trio of folk musicians. We're creating music. We're doing folk life festivals. We're playing, this, and that. I have everything I ever wanted right now, and I know it's going to change. A year later, almost all of it was gone. And then I had to really, really practice what I had been studying. And that then was another moving towards deepening that refuge, a real refuge that could actually help me, not some external force that was gonna. And the Dharma helped a lot. And Venerable Children helped a lot. My teacher was there really to support me through that period and help give me teachings and guide. So I'm on board. She had this idea about her starting in monasteries coming along. That's up. Oh yeah, I'll help. Yeah, I'm here. Count me in. I'll help from the outside. Working in Seattle got too much. I decided to move to Coeur d'Alene, by the way, former home of the Aryan nations, to move my Reiki practice with my best friend to do take another refuge, do this over here. Venerable Children goes off to Missouri. I'm there. I didn't go to Missouri, but I visited. I didn't stop going to retreats. I kept going to retreats. And I kept listening again and again and again. This is about the time, I think, when the teachings on the 4 distortions really started to make sense. The teaching that said, if you look at true dukkha, what are the 4 distortions? We hold impermanent phenomena to be permanent. We hold that which is in the very nature of unsatisfactoriness to be a source of pleasure. We hold this, which is by nature foul, to be pure, beautiful, and so forth. And we hold the self, that I want to be somebody's self, that I have been nurturing and feeding my whole life. I want to be somebody's self. Actually, does not exist in the way that it appears. When she gave those teachings the first time, I was like blown away. And I thought, this is really true. If I thought it was really true, why didn't I give up and say, okay, now I renounce? Because I was clinging to those handlebars of that tricycle of my work, of my identity, and my so forth, right? So many times along the way, I had opportunities to even come to the Abbey as it was being developed. Venerable said, why don't you come? Like, nope, I got my work. I have work to do. I'll help, but I have work to do. I did a retreat at Cloud Mountain. Venerable Tiang Chang was there. At the end of the retreat, she said, do you have a family? I said, no. She said, why don't you join us? No, no. What's the name of Venerable Wu Yin's book? Choosing Simplicity came out in 2001. I read that book. It is one of 2 books in my life that upset me so much as I was reading it that I threw it against the wall. Threw it against the wall 4 times. Why? Because I couldn't imagine being contained inside those precepts. Me, free-flowing me, right? Who want to be somebody. See, dragging along. But, so the Abbey is growing, the Abbey develops. I'm here, I'm not here, I teach on the weekends, I'm not here as much as I want to. Venerable Children sometimes says, why aren't you here more? Okay, I'm trying. But then on that retreat in 2006, I'm sitting there, so I'm getting closer. I'm meditating on these teachings. I'm meditating on the Four Noble Truths. I'm seeing deeper and deeper and deeper. The Buddha is telling the truth. And then in the middle of one session, she was teaching on 108 verses in praise of great compassion. She was teaching on the paddle wheel of our lives, right? Going up and down in the well, the bucket banging against the wall, easy to go down, hard to come up. Nothing but, this real story of cyclic existence. And then she tells this story about her brother who went off the edge of the pool on the tricycle, clinging to the end, to his little handlebars. And I got it so vividly in my mind. What am I clinging to? My work? Mostly by then, my work. Mostly by then, I still wanted to be somebody. I still want to be somebody, okay? Don't say it's over. But I wanted that need to be somebody. And in that meditation, finally, I could start to pry my fingers off the handlebar. Slowly, realizing all phenomena, all compounded phenomena are impermanent. All conditioned phenomena are in the nature of dukkha. All phenomena are empty and selfless. And nirvana is the only peace. Did that make me ordain in that moment? No, it did not. So I went to Venerable Children. I said, okay, I get it. I'm coming to the Abbey. I had a 10-minute interview. She said, not too joyfully, but receptively, she said, okay, what's your plan? I said, I just decided. I don't know. She said, when will you have a plan? I said, 6 months. She said, it will take you 6 months to figure this out. And then the next person knocked on the door. She said, okay, your time's up. And I left. Okay, so it didn't take 6 months. I figured it out shortly thereafter. It was a year before I got here. And even when I left, I had to close up my life, clean up. I mean, I was a big fish in a small pond, very small pond. But once again, I had recreated a situation where I had everything I thought I wanted, right? So I had to clean all this up, like probably everybody did. And even when I was coming here, I knew I was coming here for good. But what did I tell people? I'm going for 15 months. We'll see. As the time got closer, I thought, am I actually lying to them? I don't know. But just after a few more months, there was a key turning point. I moved here in June. I'd started actually living here many days a week in December. But I didn't actually move here until June. Venerable Semke was ordained in September. And in September, I'm going to give you one more piece. Sorry it's taking so long. One of the hang-ups for me was that I saw Venerable Children was the only nun I knew. And she had qualities that I did not imagine I could develop. That is not me. I don't have that. It takes a special person. I'm not a special person. I'm a person who wants to be somebody, right? I'm not that. But when we had that, and so that softened and changed, but when the Chinese nuns came for Venerable Semke's ordination, and I saw Venerable with a sangha of 4 more fully ordained nuns, like, oh, it's about community. I can't do that alone. But these people all together, oh, I can do that. So shortly thereafter, I made my 3 prostrations, I offered my kata, and I made my request not to take Anagarika ordination. My request was, I want to take full ordination. I know Anagarika is a process, and I'll start there, but I am on my knee here making the request that I finally get what I believed all along the Buddha was telling the truth. Now I get he's telling the truth for me. And I think the thing that needed to happen was not just that I got the first truth. I got dukkha. I understand the cause of dukkha as much as an ordinary person with a lot of afflictions can. Cessation? I don't know. Path, okay. I see that it can be taught. Cessation? I don't know. But through practice, through going on retreats, through actually feeling the difference between the satisfaction and the happiness and the joy of working in the Dharma, of living in the Dharma, of being in practice, versus the pleasure of applause, the pleasure of food, the pleasure of attention, whatever, beautiful sights, traveling the world, blah, 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 blah. No comparison. But it took a really long time. So I'm a late bloomer. My mother always said she was. I would be one too. I pray as hard, I hope, as I was praying before. Only now I'm praying that it doesn't happen so late. I'm praying that I find out a whole lot sooner. I'm praying that I don't miss a beat between this life and the next life. And that's my principal practice, is try to make sure that that's what happens. And that's my very long story. Thanks for indulging it. For, for giving up the home life for the homeless life and practicing at Sravasti Abbey.